Okay, thank you. I am Dr. Sheila Prem, today's moderator, and our today's guest is Dr. NAJEEB Ahammed. He is BHMS, IFM, FINEM, and MBA. He is an international speaker, and today he is sharing his experiences and experiment on adult ADHD. As we know that it is attention, it is a neurodevelopmental disorder. It is an attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. So let us see what he is going to tell us about his experiences and experiments. Sir, please welcome to this dais. You can now start. Thank you. Dr. NAJEEB, sir.
Career focused. Okay, 1 second. I
Yes,
think.
sir, Dr. NAJEEB.
Am I audible now?
Yes, sir. We can hear you.
Okay. And you can see my screen?
No.
Yes, it's visible. Visible. My experiment and that is the title.
Yes.
You can see
Yes,
that,
we
right?
can.
Okay,
Yes, we
great.
can.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Sheila. Thank you, IFPH.
Thank
Once
you, sir.
again, giving me an opportunity to present a topic with you. My experience and experiments with adult ADHD. You idiot, arrogant and rowdy, lazy, lousy, useless fella, and you are good for nothing. So these are common, awards and accolades, common things. Most of us during our childhood have received on and off. Okay, but there are some of us who might get this kind of prizes, showering of profuse prizes every day, several times a day. So let us see why they are getting it and how they are attracting these kind of criticism, all those, what do you call that kind of hard words against them, what is attracting all those things. So let us call him kind of, ADHD kind. Let us, see what is that. Welcome to the world of ADHD. We have, all of us have that naughtiness during our childhood. But there are some of us who has having an extra dose of naughtiness in our, and most of our childhood heroes are a typical ADHD trait of, heroes like Dennis the Menace, Peter Pan, and, Tom Cruise, what do you call that? Tom Sawyer, or sort of all those childhood heroes. They were a sort of ADHD heroes in other ways. So let us try to understand what is ADHD and why it is so relevant. What is adult ADHD and why it is so important? Those some of us who are a bit extra naughty, a bit extra hyperactive, a bit extra distracted and kind of arrogant, we call them. We give them promotion. We give them special places in a classroom, right? We put them on back bench or somewhere next to that, a row in front of that, or one or two benches in the back rows. So what are they? I don't know. We have a typical, classical picture about them. Like, most of them will end up in a grocery shop or in a manual labor, or they will be unsuccessful in a life. But you try to imagine, recall, are they really like that? If you recall those who studied with you in those back bench, are they all end up in a gully or in a street as a street vendor? No, some of them succeeded. But let us try to understand what makes them special, why they are so special. So let us meet few of the backbenchers of their time and how they have shaped our destiny, our world we are living in, and how they have made our life, what we are living today, so eventful, and how they have shaped our civilization. So let us see those backbenchers here, from Winston Churchill to Steven Spielberg, Steve Jobs, Richard Branson, Picasso, and Brad Pitt, who we call that. Those big names like Albert Einstein, they were all good for nothing once upon a time when they were in their childhood or even later time. Okay, until they find their niche, they find their something which we are going to see. What is that? Okay, so we know classically ADHD is a childhood business. It is nothing to do with adulthood. It can go maybe max to max, it can go to the early teens. Okay, this is the classical picture about ADHD. But last 10, 15 years, we had a different picture now, maybe last couple of decades. Now we know that it is not limited for childhood alone. We can see a lot of trait, even increasingly in adulthood as well. Now let us see what is this ADHD all about. ADHD is again attention deficit hyperactivity disorders, or otherwise called attention deficit disorders, which is again, as you said, Dr. Sheila said, it's a neurodegenerative disease, and which is something, a sub-branch called neurodivergent disease under the broader umbrella of neurodegenerative diseases. So it is a real disease. Why it is real? Many of us believe that it is a different name. It is a mask for those who are really lazy. And people have invented something to mask their laziness. There is nothing called ADHD. This is nothing but laziness only. So, but it is a real disease. It's a real diagnosis. It has its own classification and diagnosis in psychiatric realm and in general realm. So, and it is so common. It is a common mental health condition, and it is a condition. And you can see that in the definition. It is a condition. It is not a disease. What is the difference between a disease and a condition? Disease is something we need to cure it, and we need to address it with medicines and potions and so many other things. But a condition is, it doesn't need a cure, but we need to manage it, of course, and we need to do best out of it. This condition have two facets. It has a blessing, it has a challenge. And we need to utilize the blessings of this condition. This, ADHD is a special edition human being. They are not they have nothing wrong with them. There is something special with them. They're special with something which is not normal, can make their life miserable and can make their life, people around them, a bit, odd, of course. So how these good for nothing famous people change the world, and how they have achieved their, big things. I don't know. One more thing is about our definition. It is a common condition, right? So how common it is? It is common. It is a condition. It is something which is real. And how common it is. You will see the number. You may astonished to see the magnitude of the number. It is almost in India alone, of around 15 crores or 1,500 million of our population is somewhere affected by one or other trait of ADHD, which is 11% of the global population in overall around the world, and 5 to 6% of the adult are still suffering from adult ADHD. Then let us try to understand what is happening in a typical life of an adult ADHD or ADHD child. Okay, adult or child or children. Okay, let us see Bulla's story here. Bulla was a first-year BHMS student, and his metriamedic exam he's preparing for his metriamedic examination. He took his SK2, one of his favorite after none other than Alan's keynote, and he was reading Pulsatilla. He stumbled upon a particular word, pusillanimous. The word pusillanimous. He's trying to read beyond the word pusillanimous. The word started pulling him back. It didn't go further. The word started pulling him back, and this bird started dancing in front of him, because anything interesting, anything funny, anything special will attract its curiosity, its interest. So he started to dance with Pusillanimous of Pulsatilla. He wondered, what is this bird? Why I didn't see this bird in any of other books, and why it is so special? What is it? He thought of exploring the etymology, the root word of what was etymology of Pulsatilla and the history of the word Pulsatilla. He took his big fat red book called Webster's Dictionary. He found the Pulsatilla is not a very current contemporary word. It's an old-fashioned word and been popular in 1700 and all or 1800. Then he thought whether Kent has used it in his metriamedic or repertory, and his curiosity jumped into that. He took repertory. He, played with this repertory's finger notches, played like a piano. That is another interesting thing he wants to do. Then he opened the repertory and saw the magnanimous image of Master James Dale Kent. James Taylor, he was so fascinated to see that majestic, image or portrait of Master Kent. And his attraction went to the magnificent mustache of James Taylor Kent. It was, fanning across the upper lip of Master. And he saw something caught his attention. A few strands of white hairs are running down below the nose, and it was as if like, the water is falling, a cascade of stream is falling beneath the rocky, hills. And he thought of, after the examination, we should go to Hadirapalli, waterfall. We have planned that. Let us discuss about it. He, kept the, Dubai on the one side and kept the dictionary on the other side, kept, this repertory on the another side, and he stood up and went to meet his friend to plan about, the trip for Adirapalli waterfall. Okay. So on the way, he saw a movie magazine there. He opened it and he saw Rajesh Khanna in there. Oh, Rajesh Khanna. Oh, then he thought of Kishore Kumar. And he went to, and then the thought of Kishore Kumar, he thought of his, Walkman, Sony Walkman. He went to pick the Sony Walkman, started and sit and listening to the Kishore melodies, Mere Bigi Bigi, say all those things. So, in 5 minutes, our Bulla jump into S.K. Dubey to Webster's Dictionary. Then he went to Kent's repertory, and his curiosity went to Cine Magazine and Rajesh Khanna. From there, he jumped all the way to Kishore Kumar, and he took his, from S.K. Dubey. He didn't complete Pulsatilla. He didn't complete Webster's Dictionary. He didn't complete Kent's repertory. He was jumping from one thing to another, one thing to his curiosity. You must have seen Curious George, the cartoon, character. So he was curious about every other things. So this is something typical for an ADHD guy. Okay, he has so many interests, so many weaknesses, so many passions, and he will be having a very high multiple intelligence scores or quotients, unlike many others. So he will be blessed with a lot of intelligence, musical intelligence, artistic intelligence, linguistics. He will be probing behind all the words in the dictionary. Any words, he will be exploring the history. So he will be having a high level of linguistic intelligence. He'll be having high level of artistic intelligence, musical intelligence, kinesthetic. He cannot sit there. He started, jumped out of his chair. He, ventured across the house and he started to meet his friend. So he will be so restless. So they will be creative and genius in their creative thing, like Michelangelo, Picasso, and they'll be having something called synthesis of ideas, like Steve Jobs. Okay, he synthesized art, his knowledge in calligraphy with the technology, and we got this something called iPhone. So that is what. Then can you see my screen? You can see that, right? And you can see me, right? I don't know. Okay, it's fine. At least you can hear me, right? Dr. Sheila, you can hear, right? Okay. Then there will be something like, novelty of an interest to explore something new, an interest to, go out of the box. Okay, so and he will be, once he is out of the box, still if something is interesting, he will be hyper focused. Though he will be distracted quite often, but something which is, attracting his attention, something which is interesting for him, he may, like, for example, he took his Walkman, and 5 minutes he was jumping into five different things. But he took his Walkman, he was listening to music. Next 1 hour, he forgot everything, and he was immersed inside the music of Kishore Kumar and Rajesh Khanna. So he can be immersive. He can lose the touch of the world around him. Something, if it is something interesting. On the other way, he can be lost his interest quite often, every other second, and he will be jumping into one activity to another activity, and it can be there in his entire life in a macro level as well. So they have multiple intelligence. They are smart in many things, but there is something for this, the other side of the flip side of it. There can be something we call that a curse of high multiple intelligence. All these are there. Then let us take Bulla in his later life. He has learned a lot of other things other than homeopathy. He did practice of medicine. He was a corporate trainer. He was a millet mission supporter or propagator. He did FMCG business, and he did the medical, technology businesses, and also he was into so many other things, maybe 20, 30 business activities. So, typically this is something we can see. If it is not that extreme, you will see most of the ADHD, in many of the ADHD, you will see this kind of fluctuation in their life from one thing to another thing. And usually ADHD behavior, when you come to this behavioral traits of ADHD, they usually are nice talking. Why they are nice talking? They have something called RSD. We will come to that. What is it? They will be people pleasing because of this RSD. They will avoid all kind of conflicts. Okay, they will swallow their disappointments, their conflict of ideas, and they will simply yield with the like opalsatilla. They will be complying every contradictions. They won't challenge it. So that is what it is. So they will be having this with, once they will be getting a lot of rejection, for example, because they have a lot of ideas. Every ideas, they will jump from their own ideas, and they will present to a lot of people all these ideas, and people mostly say no, because these ideas, when they present, they will see something kind of wavering, and they will say no. If they say no, he will go to another guy with another ideas. So multiple rejections can take him to a kind of emotional and in a kind of walling off, kind of withdrawal. Okay, and at times he will be having a lot of, due to this multiple intelligence, high level of intelligence, he may fall to this trap of overconfidence. Okay, so, and overconfidence can sometimes put him into all kind of wrong side of the business or other things, and he may often ignore this intuition, okay, of failure. Sometimes he will get some signs and symptoms of danger, but still he will suppress this intuition for the ability he has, for the confidence he has. So due to that confidence, he will push the kind of signals or kind of those intuitions aside, and he'll jump into all kind of messy, nasty things. So another thing about key features about ADHD is that they'll be having a kind of cognitive haste. They talk fast, they think fast, they jump from things to things. They cannot read even a word because they will see only some letters. They won't see entire letter of a sentence or a word. Okay, in between the letters, they will fill the gap with their imagination, because all those letters will be dancing in front of them, and those letters he will be simply blending these jumbling words or letters with his kind of imagination, instead of reading letter by letter or word by word, even the sentences. he won't read the complete sentences. He'll be filling the gaps with kind of his because his mind will be, his eyes will be jumping from one word to another so fast, and he tend to miss a lot of words, a lot of letters, and he commit a lot of spelling mistakes, a lot of other kind of mistakes. So another thing is that emotional dysregulation. Due to this constant high ambitiousness, a lot of passions, and eventually getting a lot of rejections, he must be getting a lot of emotional dysregulation, depressions, anxieties, all kind of things. Another thing is that multitasking tendencies. Though they have a lot of faculties and capacities, and they tend to go a lot of multitasking, they are not a good candidate of multitasking. Multitasking is not actually meant for. So this contradiction can often cause a lot of problem in their day-to-day life. Another one is they have a difficulty in focusing in linear, loss stimulating. A lot of our job is routine. Every job, a doctor's job is also sometimes routine, or even a job, something like clerical job is so routine and so boring, and they will be having even organizing in things. It's a boring job for him. He hate organizing because his brain is always having a lot of ideas, so it should be done by somebody else. So that is what they think. And due to all these emotional ideas and sensory influxes, and a kind of cascades of thoughts, they'll be having a kind of anything too much, that will end up a deadlock. Okay. And there'll be something called sensory overwhelming, a kind of frozen brain. You must be seen that in our typical Calibrom and all, like brain fog and brain fog kind of thing, frozen brain. Okay, then something which is very particular, which we have already mentioned about it, called RSD, rejection sensitivity dysphoria. This is perhaps the most common thing for almost all the ADHD kinds. And this is very pain. No, this is common, and yet it is a very painful condition. This dysphoria will make their mind so miserable. Due to this dysphoria, due to this avoidance of rejection, they tend to do a few other things, which is the classical thing about their typical ADHD symptoms. Like what? For example, they have this. They have. Uh, Okay, there'll be nice talking, there'll be people pleasing, they'll be having a lot of, conflict avoiding tendencies. All these are due to this rejection sensitive dysphoria. Okay, so this dysphoria or this rejection can cause a lot of pain in them. Okay, and lot of pain. And this pain is not an emotional pain, it is the actual physical pain they might feel. The kind of severe pain in chest, a kind of stabbing or punching on abdomen kind of thing. Okay, and a typical ADHD child, let us take for example, this rejection dysphoria, how it is, the pathophysiology has been developed. Okay, by the age of 10, a typical ADHD child might get around 20,000 negative feedbacks, negative no's, don'ts. Don't do that. You fool. You good for nothing. Wicked boy. All those problem child will be bombarded with all these, words, of course. Okay. So 20,000 negative feedbacks, admonitions, and criticisms or scolding can be there in the life of a typical ADHD child by the age of 10. So, what can be the few impact in the life of, okay? So ADHD symptoms are always frustrating, and it can cause a lot of problem in various aspects of the life, in schools and education, of course. Okay, many billion-dollar brains in schools, because our schools are not meant for ADHD. Schools might ask a fish to climb a tree. You must have heard of that. Our schools are not meant for various kinds of intelligence and traits. So many of them will go into that backbench. From there, they will go to some, low rank, jobs and all. So many great people with enormous capabilities and in caliber might have lost their career and lost their life because the education system did not discover them, or something we later will see didn't happen in their life. Somebody didn't come in their life, which they were lacking or missing. And again, in career and financial life, most industry fails to recognize, understand the utilities or utilize the untapped gold mine called ADHD. In industry, if they know that this ADHD is the gold mine, we can do a lot with them. But unfortunately, industry scales and standards are not into that. And again, in personal relationship, many of times they won't find the partner understanding, or their fathers or parents not accommodate, not understanding. Not every, Ishan Avasti will get a trainer like Amir Khan. What is his name? You must have seen that Tare Zameen Par. So it is, or Annie Sullivan for Helen Keller. Helen Keller's life was miserable until 6 or 7 years, until Anne Sullivan came into her life. So it is what it is. A relationship or some mentor and social life strains like, problem child, useless husband, or unsuccessful businessman. These are all the social branding usually a typical ADHD child or an adult ADHD person might get during their life. Okay. So there is something called the shame loop. Okay. A typical symptoms might come in their life. For example, they may, due to their clumsiness, they have even the physical problem in their brains. For example, extreme pruning of neurons. Kind of they will be having a kind of clumsy hands. They fall things. Okay, due to so many other reasons also, like neurotransmitter related reasons also. So this can invite something called scolding, for example, or missing a deadline in an office. That can invite, punishment or penalties. So what will happen? That will internalized. The ADHD typically they will, I'm a lazy person, I'm good for nothing. And they will internalize these negative things. And what will happen? This loop will cause kind of paralyzing anxiety, avoidance behavior, masking and walling off, like our Staphysaguria or Natriureticum. So this kind of thing can happen in as a vicious cycle, or something we typically called the adult ADHD or ADHD shame loop, typically. Okay. What are the different types of ADHD? What are three different types. One is inattention or distraction. Another one is hyperactivity or impulsiveness. And the third one is a blend of these two. Inattention or distraction with hyperactive, both of that. And unfortunately, that is the most common one. We'll come to that. Distraction, okay, we have seen that in the life of Bulla, the the BHMS student. Okay, they'll be having a lot of distraction, a lot of interest, a lot of multiple intelligence, a lot of curiosity. From one thing they will jump to other things. So they'll be having this lack of focus, being distracted, and without symptoms of hyperactivity. That is the pure, ADD or attention deficit disorders. Okay, there is no hyperactivity. That is a pure ADD, and the children will be having all those inattentiveness and daydreaming a lot. This, this type of distraction kind of thing or daydreaming is more in common than male. And all these symptoms can be there: lack of focus, difficulty in organizing, careless mistakes, spelling mistakes, trouble in holding attention, dislike tasks which doesn't need which need sustained mental effort, and they lose their things here and there due to this kind of You must have heard that word called absent-minded professor. So that is not because they are something careless, because they have that brain wired so they tend to forget things. They tend to have all these funny symptoms in their life, and they even miss their familiar road. One of the stories is that Einstein missed his house, and he called this, maid to ask for the route map of his house. So this kind of thing can happen. Okay. And type 2 is hyperactivity or impulsive type. And here we will be having more physical symptoms and again mental symptoms, a lot of agitations. This is a bit less common in adulthood than childhood. Okay. A pure hyperactivity, okay, is less common. Doesn't mean that hyperactivity is rare. The hyperactivity is very common, but a pure hyperactivity is not that common without attention deficit. Okay, this type is mostly hyperactivity alone is mostly in boys, and you will see all these traits and symptoms in them. There will be, this is very visible, unlike distraction type or attention type. You can see this in them, okay, and they will get a lot of scolding in their childhood or in adulthood, and they'll be having a lot of vivid imagination. They will difficulty and to be patient in a queue, and to be patient to sit still in a place. They'll be having a lot of patience. If he's a doctor, he cannot sit in his clinic and wait for his patient, and they'll be interrupting while talking, while others are talking, and they will tend to finish the word for others, and they are always on the go until they see their mentor. This combined type is the most common. Interestingly, it is the most common than pure inattention or pure hyperactivity. Okay, so they'll be having both the signs, all these symptoms and signs we have in various degrees. There is nothing called typical. You can have this in various shades and shapes. There is nothing typical. Okay, somebody can have a lot of hyperactivity, little inattention, like that. Okay, they tend to forget their daily chores. They'll be often distracted. They'll be having a lot of restlessness, and they'll be talking, prattling, and they will be a bit of talkative, like our lachesis. Okay, how can we diagnose this? What are the basic thing to you know because this is it's not a very concrete thing like other diseases. Okay, we may get, this can be kind of lazy worker or lazy child. There may not be any actual problem with him. Okay, where is the demarcation? How we can differentiate an actual lazy person or a ADHD guy? Okay, the result is here. Like, there should be a persistence of pattern. Laziness can be the typical laziness. The original laziness can be sporadic. You can have lazy period, you can have active period and all. But in ADHD, you will see this persistence of laziness. At least 6 months, you will see that persistence. No, persistence. And you will see always a childhood onset. It won't simply happen after sometimes you will see one of your employees behaving kind of ADHD mimicking symptoms. You may think that he must be having, but if his childhood is free from all these symptoms, he is not ADHD. One cannot have adult ADHD, adult onset ADHD during his adulthood alone. Okay, and you will see these symptoms, these patterns in multiple settings. You're going to see that laziness only in workplace or only at home, only in the social setup. You will see that in multiple setup. Okay. And another thing is you will see this functional impairment, reduced quality of functional, activity in their life. Okay. That is another thing. Okay, so we need to you need to rule out a few other comorbid conditions, similar mimicking conditions like hypothyroidism or hyperthyroidism or pure anxiety and depression. These are the conditions which can mimic a typical ADHD. And how can we manage ADHD? Okay, There are a set of management, how these guys manage their area and become successful. Like Winston Churchill and Albert Einstein to Steven Spielberg, they were all, even Steve Jobs, they were all highly successful in their life despite having all these conditions. Now, what was that? A typical ADHD is a person who is somebody who has a wonderful car, a beautiful car, a state of art, a great machine in that, an engine which is that of Rolls Royce, a premium engine, and it has all the beautiful leather seats and cushions, but he doesn't know how to drive. Okay, he doesn't know how to. He hate driving. Okay, and he's instead of driving, the car drives him. Okay, it is something we call, ADHD brain. ADHD brain is something like this car, a beautiful brain. It has a lot of capacity, a powerful engine. It has a lot of giftedness, but it doesn't know how to manage, how to drive these capacities, these faculties and blessings into something productive. It doesn't know how to do that, and he need a driver for that. Okay, he needs somebody who can run his chariot. Okay, he needs a Parthasarathi. Okay, this is something called E2 or double inefficiencies. Okay, finding the right driver, finding a personal scaffold or a guardian angel is something which is missing in those who are failed in their life being ADHD. But those who are successful, those who were high achievers, like Thomas Edison, he had Nikola Tesla with him. Or Steve Jobs had Mike Markula, and Aristotle, for Alexander the Great, he had Aristotle who gave him wisdom and torch. And for Plato, it was Socrates who gave him all those great wisdom. And for Arjuna, it was Lord Krishna who ran his chariot and who ran his, vision and wisdom. Again, for Bill Gates, it was Paul Allen who opened the gates of success in the industry of, technological industry. What happens in the brains of a typical ADHD person? There is a lot of problem with dopamine. That is the neurotransmitter level, the chemical level. There'll be a lot of problem with norepinephrine, regulation. When it comes to dopamine, there are a lot of dopamine receptors and underproduction of dopamine. So receptors will be crying for dopamine, and his system is not producing good enough. So he will invent every opportunity to produce dopamine, and he will explore all the novelties to create dopamine. So that is what it is. And again, norepinephrine is another thing that will trigger his activities and focuses. So that will be lacking again. So in another thing, his prefrontal cortex will be having a bit of underdevelopment in some facets of prefrontal cortex, and in turns will be having a lot of underactivity in there in that will otherwise help him in executive function. Okay, so default mode network is something which will happen in most of these ADHD cases. Okay, so default mode is the brain will jump into all those ET dopamine channels instead of focusing into something which can disengage, that can kill their interest. And when it comes to genetics, 70 to 80%, there will be a strong genetic predisposition. They'll be having some parents in them, and they'll be having a lot of it is polygenomic. That is why due to this polygenomic, you will see a lot of phenotypical presentation in ADHD. We can have a lot of variations, a lot of spectrum variations in the clinical symptoms or phenotypic symptoms of ADHD, because it is a lot of genes are responsible for in micro level and in tiny bit density level, tiny bitty level. And then another thing is that the predilection, the onset in the early childhood, which is environmental, for example, or biographical factors like parents, like teachers. Okay, If they are supportive, they will be managing a lot. If they are administering and admonishing and critical, you will see a failed person, a lost gem who will go into the waste bin, dustbin, or in the drain instead of becoming a Steve Jobs or becoming an Alexander the Great. Even our teachers might have killed a lot of great brains in the classrooms. This is something which we can see in the education system, which is happening every other day, every colleges, every schools. Okay, and as I have earlier said, 20,000 negative, scoldings and feedbacks in the childhood alone, and let alone after the adulthood, they will be inviting much more scolding and admonitions and penalties during their personal life, in their workplace, and in lot many other occasions. Okay, let us try to understand a few other conditions which is very mimicking, very similar, and sometimes which can happen together with ADHD. Sometimes it can confuse you like an ADHD, which can be a mimicking thing. Hashimoto thyroiditis. Thyroid disease in general can mimic in many ways to ADHD. Hyperthyroidism can mimic, in most of the case, hypothyroidism. In a big chunk of case, it is Hashimoto. And this comorbidity is very real. And you will see this hyperthyroidism almost 2.23% in cases. Oh, the prevalence is so much more higher. And hyper in 1.72 cases. Hypo is much more prevalent than hyper, but you will see much higher levels of thyroid dysfunction with ADHD cases. Okay, it is highly likely that you will see an ADHD guy with thyroid dysfunction together. And interestingly, these symptoms are mostly similar as well. Okay. So again, autoimmune diseases. Hashimoto itself is an autoimmune condition. You will see anti-TPO antibodies in them, and this mimicry effect of this thing, hypothyroidism, can cause hyperactivity, distraction kind of thing, and hyperthyroidism can cause hyperactivity kind of symptoms. And again, sleep disorders and sleep disordered breathing is another condition which can cause a lot of ADHD kind of symptoms, which can mimic. You will be having high obstructive sleep apnea, which can cause a lot of symptoms similar to hyperactivity, similar to attention deficit and all, brain fog and all. So you need to rule out the person is free from sleep disordered breathing. And again, other comorbid condition, which is a kind of very similar, is autism spectrum disorders, other dyslexia kind of, and again, this can be together, this can be alone, and giftedness, we said E2. People will be having highly intelligent, but they'll be having again cursed by this inaction, or cursed by kind of poor executive functions. So that is 2E. Double exceptions, otherwise you call that double exceptions. They are exceptionally brilliant, they are exceptionally lazy, or kind of exceptionally ineffective. Exceptionally brilliant and exceptionally ineffective. So this is something which is very kind of paradox we can see in the case of ADHD. And they tend to go to various kinds of addictions and abuses. Various kinds. It can be music, it can be alcohol, it can be substance abuses, it can be something else, it can be religious fanaticism, or say anything else like that. Sorry. And interestingly, comorbidity can be very common among this ADHD cases. Okay, so these are the few ADHD mimicking conditions like sleep disorders, thyroid dysfunctions, vision, hearing losses, otherwise, which were seen in Helen Keller, anemia, iron deficiencies. Iron deficiency, for example, can cause a lot of restless leg syndrome, RLS. And that can be something alone without ADHD. But in many cases, you can see both together. and diabetes, weakness and forgetfulness, brain fog, and in hypoglycemia. Okay, we need to understand this. We need to understand this very important thing. ADHD is not a character flaw. It's a neurobiological difference. It's a fast-moving river that needs a bank, it needs a dam, not a dam, that needs some shapes, it needs some, uh, restrictions and banks, not a dam, not a total hindrance, not a blockade. Okay, what are the conventionally they use stimulants, psychoactive medicines. Okay, and there are non-stimulant medicines like norepinephrine modulatory medicines are there, and there'll be uh, typical CBT or cognitive behavior therapy kind of thing for and coaching and skill building things in a typical psychological scenario. Let me go to a few homeopathic medicine. I think we have time, right? Let me just go through quickly, and we'll go to the question and answer. Lycopodium clavatum, you will see intellectual perfectionist, and they'll be having a lot of insecurities. Anticipatory anxiety could be there, but they once they started doing, they will be doing. They'll perform their task well, and they are intellectually keen, and they'll be having this train of ideas which can paralyze their routine. Again, digestive disorders is something we can see in lycopodium and sometimes in ADHD as well. Amadorinum, a typical hyperactive with enormous trains of ambitions and thoughts. Okay, his brain is highly active, and they'll be having a lot of chronic dissatisfaction. That is a very strong thing for ADHD as well. History of suppressed infections, as asthmatic background, changeableness of mood and ideas. Okay, love to be in to move around and see near, go to the sea, open air, seashores and all, and they have high changeability in there. Another one is tuberculinum, restlessness is there, and a lot of deers to liking to travel, okay, and to desire for change, novelty, and they'll be having again discontentment. ADHD will be having a lot of discontentment as tuberculinum, and he has a kind of this with liking of this travel, he will be having a peculiar fear of confinement, the opposite of travel. Okay. So Ajahn and Itrigam, the talking fast, walking fast, a lot of other impulsiveness, and they will be having a lot of visual, hallucinations, impulsivity, and irresistible urge to jump out of window, anticipatory anxiety and restlessness, a kind of vivid imagination, okay, like for our phosphorus, okay, as if the building is falling on him and the car is coming and bumping on him, kind of thing can be there, kind of as if he see that, as if it is happening. Okay, and there are a few other like agenometricum, sulfur, nitricum, sulfur, and beta carbon, zinc met, which is particularly important in fidgety and restlessness, and it will be particularly indicated in restless leg syndrome, and you can see a lot of yielding disposition of pulsatile in what ADHD. Lack of concentration. When it comes to rubrics, lacking of focus, distraction, daydreaming a lot. These are all the few medicine and careless, committing mistakes, brain fog, headlessness, vivid imagination. These are the rubrics you can find in this thing. And one of the case for ADHD case was lycopodium 200, which have seen wonderful effect in, and pulsatilla vannam, medorinum. These are a few cases have tried with homeopathy, and you must be having your own experience in that. And I would like to listen to you now. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much, Dr. Sheila. Over to my friends who are here in the meeting. I am done. I am waiting for the others for their experience. If they have something to ask, they can ask that. Thank you. Over to Dr. Sheila. Let me stop this.
There is
I want to stop sharing first. I think it is stopped, I think. Yeah.
yes.
Yeah. Dr. Ram Pareshar sir,
Yes, Dr.
how are you?
Dr. Karnagar. Dr. Karnagar, you can speak now.
Yeah, okay. Hello,
Yes.
my voice is audible, sir.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes, yes, you're audible.
recently this your explanation is very nice, sir. And your whatever the drugs which have covered, they are used regularly, especially medorinum and lycopodium as a miasmatic layer. That one. So here mainly Soros, if you take a tubercular miasm is more indicated, and tuberculinum gives. Recently, I have treated one case. He never sit in one place, and everyone is claimed he is not a normal student like that. But surprisingly, he got out of 50, 49 and a half marks in classrooms. The teachers have stated that this boy is very normal, except this hurriedness and never sit in one place. Otherwise, very good. I also used a tuberculinum for that baby, and occasionally middle of that Naxwamika. Why? Because that baby has developed constipation, involuntary urge for stool is there, but sometimes irritability is there. So I used Naxwamika middle of that for controlling high irritability and other things. But tuberculinum, I used different kinds of potencies, tuberculinum followed by this calcarea carb as acute to the tuberculinum. But very, sir, earlier he never sit and he never never show interest to go to the school also. Never recognize the neighbors also. And mother was felt very depressive. Why? Because the boy age is also nearly 12 years or 13 years age is there. So now he is mingled with my all relatives and sitting together, and they are whatever recognizing and wishing and all the activities like a normal boy. And their mother has brought that question and answer sheet, how he was writing. Earlier she was expressed very depressive nature. My boy is not like that, not like that. She was showing me. I also shocked. Out of 50 marks in all subjects, not only single subject, 3 or 4 subjects are there for that boy. He was attempted. Out of 4 subjects, 50 to 49 and 49 and up. This is a very nice. So, but even we have a good opportunity, good scope in that aspect. So, because of dominism of conventional medicine, we are not express our medical medicines are more efficacious. But recently, in the last phase, they have turned into our system of medicine. Whether we have confusion state, their first question they have raised, we have to stop medication or not. So in that stage, it's a very difficulty to take a decision. Why? Because we have confidence to reduce the doses, all other things. After reducing the dose, anything, something happening in the case, but their first claim is because of using homeopathic medicine, such type of reactions are occurring in the case. They uh, ready to stop the homeopathic medicine. Even so many consequences are resulting, even not getting good result, all other things by using conventional medicine. But patients are very patient. But when come to the homeopathic man, why it is fortunate or unfortunate, I don't know exactly. They are insisting. So we want to advise us to stop the medication, all other things. But conventional man never is thing. So even recently I treated one more cases also. The boy was
Dr. Karnagar, Dr. Karnagar, time is about to finish. So
yeah, okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
you can come up with your own presentation later.
Yeah, okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you.
It's a very nice, sir. You are showing very clear conventional and homeopathic aspect. It is very useful, sir. We are what we call reviewing all our knowledge, sir.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, nice, sir.
So Dr. Rambaresh sir want to speak.
Yes.
Thank you, Dr. Dhanesh ji. And thank you, Dr. Sheila, and congratulations, Dr. NAJEEB Ahmed sir. Very nice, excellent presentation, adult ADHD. कि child is the important role ADHD, but adult ADHD background of miasmatic, role of miasmatic, Shora, psychotic and tubercular diathesis, है ना? तो मेंटल यानी की नोट मेंटल एंड बिहेवियरल inner restlessness, adult ADHD, inner restlessness, impulsivity, and low frustration, and lifestyle pattern, late night, irregular routine, multiple frequent job. So emotional keynote, anxiety, overthinking, past failures, and relationship issues, etc. So very good describe the adult ADHD. And homeopathic keynote approach, lot of medicine, anacardium, medorinum is a very good remedy, and tarantula, naxvumka, lachesis, britacar, lot of medicine.
Yes.
So very thanks, Dr. Najeeb sir. Thank you. Very thanks.
Yeah, thank you for reminding this tarantula and anacardium and all. These are anacardium especially and tarantula for restlessness. Those are wonderful medicine which we have seen in ADHD. A lot of result in that.
Naxvumka is a very good
Yes.
remedy due to
Yes.
anger.
Yeah.
Anger.
So,
Yes, yes,
So,
Dr. Najeeb,
Yeah.
it was really a brilliant session. You really rocked the floor with your knowledge and power of.
Good remedy. Astimonium is a good remedy due to
Yes.
fear. Good.
Yes.
50% bimari, main cause of disease. Only one word, fear. Astimonium.
No,
Thank you.
thank you so much, sir.
usually people never think of this adult ADHD, but always people are running, doctors are running for some other big disease. They may think that it is due to some other problem, or maybe due to some physiological harassment or something like that. But actually, recognizing the disease itself is a great thing. But even in homeopathy, whether it is, that's the reason why we used to say treat the patient, not the disease. When you treat a patient, you can find all these things, particularly as you point out in carcinosin, tuberculum. These are always changeability is one of the basic character. And the same thing can happen. But usually people believe that Barrett carpet symptoms are there in, actually it is not. They are exemplary, brilliant personalities.
Yes.
That is what we would like to think. They may have some they sometimes they may be especially interested in dancing, or sometimes they were technically equipped with the knowledge of in music organs, or sometimes in their intellectual ability in mathematics, like that. Then sometimes their memory is so brilliant, but they may not be able to write or all those things. So in those conditions, we have homeopathic solution to all these things. Unfortunately, people are not thinking in that line. It is our duty to take note to this and make awareness give awareness sessions to public, so that public will recognize that homeopathy has a solution for all these things. Anyway, congratulations once again. Over to Dr. Sheila. Great.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much, sir. Dr. Najeeb, it is a wonderful section. And from on behalf of IFPH, I am showering our thank you, loving and love and thanks to you. Thank you so much for all the participants. And now time is over, 2 minutes over, sir. So it is passing over to the Malayalam session team. Thank you so much and good night.
Good night. Ghar Ghar Homeopathy, Ghar Ghar Homeopathy.